Okay, good day everyone. So I just want to inform everybody that this session is recorded. So if you missed something important here in my session today, you can actually check it out this one in our completed section. Okay? So I just want to remind all of you that we are still in basic business mathematics. So we are in chapter 4, particularly in this lesson, which is lesson 3, all about the obligations and equations of values. Okay, so please allow me to introduce the topic that we have today, which is all about the obligations as well as the equations of values. Okay, so for this lesson, it introduces the concept of discounting a future sum of money to determine its current value. Okay, so for this topic for today, it involves always the concept of the present value of a future cash flow. Okay, so that matter is actually one of the fundamental calculations underlying the mathematics of finance. Okay, so this lesson also introduces the concept of the time value of money and equations of value, which allows us to accumulate or discount a series of financial transactions and are used to solve many problems in financial mathematics. All right. So, as stated here, all the financial decisions must take into account the basic idea that money has time value. So, let me just emphasize this concept or this idea that money has time value. Okay, so it's important to know your money, okay, today, a year, okay, for the next years to come, okay, for the second years, okay, and so on and so forth. So it's important to know the money, okay, the money you have, wherein money has time value. In other words, I'll give you some counter example. Say, for example, that you will be receiving 1 million today, and it's not the same as you will be receiving 1 million 1 year ago, isn't it? 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So it's not the same. So important. It's important. Okay, so the time is important. So in financial transaction involving money due in different dates, so every sum of the mathematics of finance deals with the dated values. Okay, so as what I stated, it talks about the dated values. So we will know how to how to compute certain problem on that. Okay, so now let's proceed here to the values of obligation. So when we say obligation or values of obligation, okay, so a set of specified sum of payments, okay, so if you're pertaining to the specified sum of payments on designated dates you have, say for example, you borrowed money, okay, or something like you deposited money, something like that, okay, but always it pertains to the borrowed money, okay. So say for example you have there borrowed money designated dates as well, so that will be now called as a values of obligation. Okay, so if a sum is due on a certain date and another amount f is due on n, okay, wherein f is your final amount and your n will be your number of periods in a year, okay, interest periods, then we could actually refer to the two amounts as equivalent value. So later we will know how do we come up with that idea, okay? So again, when you say obligation, we all know, as we all know, right, an obligation in finance is actually, referring to the responsibility to meet the terms of contract, right? Because if you borrowed money, of course you will be having a contract there, right? Wherein there are some cases in real life situation that if an obligation is not met, okay, of course the legal system will be provided. Okay, the legal system often provides recourse for the injured party. Okay, so how an obligation works. So the financial obligations actually represent any outstanding debts or regular payments that you must make. So if you owe or will owe money to anybody, that is actually one of your financial obligations now. Okay po? So again, when we say obligation, if you borrowed money and you have now designated dates, okay, for you to pay that certain amount, okay, so that will be now serve as an obligation. So let's have here an example one for you to understand more about the concept of obligation. So let me read this one to you. If money is worth 14% compounded quarterly, which of the following obligations is the most valuable? So we have here three conditions. So we are actually looking for what is the most valuable obligations we have here. For condition number one, we have 20,000 due at the end of 1 year without interest. Okay, so this will be served as your final amount. You have there the amount at the end of 1 year without interest. That's the first condition. Letter B is we have here the 25,000 due at the end of 3 years naman, okay, at 10% simple interest. So as you can see here in given letter B, we have here simple interest only, right? We have the principal amount and the time and the rate of interest. So we can actually use the formula itself for the simple interest for us to find the final amount because we are looking for the final amount to compare, okay? To compare the values, okay? So how are we going to know the most valuable obligations? So if you have the bigger or the biggest amount for the final amount, okay po, so that must be served as the most valuable obligation. So we are actually looking for the bigger or the biggest final amount. Okay, so if you're going to substitute, you just need to plug in the P, the R, and T. Okay, so the rate of interest is actually 10%. So if you're going to convert that one into decimal point, that will become zero point 0.1. That's why we have a zero point 0.1. You just need to plug in here. And your T will be 3 years. And if you're going to simplify this one in your calculator, so you just need to input all the data. You have here this one, and you will be having this answer, which is 32,500. So that's for letter B. What about letter C? Letter C condition will be 15,000 due at the end of 6 years at 18%, wherein the frequency of conversion you have will be equal to 12. Okay, so all you have to do here, since we have your frequency of conversion, of course you can actually use the formula for compound interest, and this will be the formula. So we all know that I is actually equal to what? The rate of interest all over the frequency of conversion, okay, which is equal to the rate of interest, which is 0.18, okay, all over your M is 12. And what is 0.18 divided by 12? The answer will be 0.015. That's why we have a 0.015. And for your n, we all know that your n is actually equal to m times t. Okay, so your m is actually equal to 12. And your time is actually equal to 6. Okay, as you can see here. So 12 times 6, you will be having here 72. So all you have to do is you have to plug in the corresponding values. You have your I, which is 0.015, and your N is 72. So if you're going to simplify this one, input this one in your calculator, then you will be having this answer, which is 43,817.37. Okay? So you have now the final amount. The next thing to do, we're gonna actually, follow the steps. Okay, so we have here the steps. The first step that we should do will be identifying the given information. So let's identify the given information. So this is small r for the rate of interest. We all know that the rate of interest is actually 14% as general. And if we're going to convert that one into decimal point, that will be equal to 0.14. And your frequency of conversion is 4 since we're talking about quarterly here. And for finding the I, you just need to divide only 0.14 into 4, and you will be having 0.035. So this will be your I. Okay, number one, step one, you have to identify the given information. Number two, you can now actually draw a time diagram. Okay po. So this will be something like a cash flow. Okay. So once you draw now a time diagram, you can now actually choose any focal date that you want. So I want you to listen carefully. Okay. So you can actually use any focal date in the given time diagram po. Okay. So for instance, for this example number one po, I use here as a fourth year as my focal date. So how do I come up with fourth year? So ito po yung fourth year. So again po, let's draw time diagram. So we all know how many years po ang kailangan ma-accumulate dito. So we have here 1 year, third year, and 6 year. Okay, 6 years. So we have here let's draw a time diagram. Let's say this will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And take note that my focal date will be fourth year. So you can actually use any focal date. But this one, I choose fourth year as my focal date. So it's up to you which one do you like for the focal date. Kasi po, we have the same naman po kasi ibabalik po natin yan sa focal date when we are looking for the N na po. So, let me just repeat that in your first year, you have their 20,000 as your first final amount, your EB sub 1. And for the second final amount, for the third year, you will be having 32,500 EB sub 2. And for your EB sub 3 will be the 6, okay, 6 years po, the final amount po, which is 43,817.3, okay? So all you have to do here is you have to find the value of your N because we are actually comparing the amount, okay? We are actually comparing the amount, which one is most valuable, okay po? Kasi we are looking for the valuable, most valuable obligation, right? So dito po, again, let me just give you the technique. So say for example, you have here if you are actually pertaining to the past, okay, to the past po, your exponent will become negative, of course. Okay, so negative exponent po siya. If you are actually pertaining to the future, okay po, of course, your exponent will be positive. Okay, so that's the concept. So take a look out of this. So say for example, we are looking for the 20,000, okay, for the value of the N, and the focal date that we have is this one. So this will be served as our boundaries po for 4. So ibabalik lang po natin dito sa focal date, okay po. So as you can see here, every year we have 4 periods, tama? Since we're talking about quarterly, your M is 4, right? So we can actually use divide that one into 4. So we have here 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have 4 periods in a year. Okay po? So dito po, paano po natin nakuha yung 12? Since we're talking about 1, okay? At dito po, kumbaga, kino-compare po natin siya into 4, binabalik natin siya into 4, okay po? And we all know that this will be in the near future, right? In future po. Therefore, your exponent will become positive. So you just need to what? To count this one for how many periods we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's why you have here 12. So it's positive because it talks about future. Okay? What about the third year? Okay, so ibalik lang po natin to the focal date. And this is positive because it talks about future because dito pa lang tayo, third year. At fourth year po is in the future. That's why you are positive exponent. And what will be the value of your N here for the 30,500 as your F sub 2? That is actually equal to N equals 4 po. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And for this one, for the 6th year, this will be the F sub 3 we have. Okay? Ibabalik lang po natin sa focal date na sinet po natin. Okay? So as you can see here, this will be 6th year. Okay? At focal date natin po ay 4th year. Therefore, it talks about in the past po, isn't it? So your exponent will become negative. Okay? So this will become N equals negative what? Negative, so let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's why we have a negative 8. Okay? So now, you are now done with step 2, identifying the N for every conditions we have. So now let's proceed to step 3. We're going to actually accumulate or discount the given amounts depending on its location in the time diagram. Okay, again, for the first condition we have 20,000, for the third 32,500, and for the second is 32, for the third it will be 43,817.37. So nakuha po natin yung value ng ating N, which is 12, and dito po sa pangalawa 4, as you can see here. So we have 4. And for the last one is N equals negative 8. All you have to do here is you have to find the final amount to compare which one is most valuable. Okay, so obligation po. So we have your principal, which is 20,000. You just need to plug in 1 plus I. Your I, how do we come up with I? Let's go back to step 1. Okay, so nag-divide lang po tayo as general, right? So 0.035 po. That's why we have our 0.035 as your I. And your N will be 12 for the first condition. So in simplifying this one, 20,000 quantity 1 plus 0.035 raised to 12, you will come up with this final amount, which is 30,221.37. Okay, and for the second one, accumulate 32,500 wherein your n is equal 4, as you can see here, n equals 4. So plug in lang po sa formula, 32,500, 1 plus 0.035 raised to 4. So you will be having here 37,000. If you're going to input that one in your calculator, all the data, you'll be having 37,294.50. And for the third condition, okay, your n will be equal to negative 8 because it talks about in the past. That's why you have your negative 8. And your P is 43 as what we computed, right? 1 plus your I will be 0.035, the same. Raised to negative 8, so that will be your N. And if you're going to simplify that one input into the calculator, you will be having this result, which is equal to 33,275.42. Okay, so now we have now here the final amounts for the three conditions. So we're going to actually compare. Which one is bigger here? Is it the first case, the second case, or the third case? Of course, letter B. Okay, the second condition, right? So in conclusion, we can actually say that the most valuable obligation, okay, given the three condition, is in the second choice. Okay po, which is yung 25,000 due at the end of 3 years at 10% simple interest. So ito po yung most valuable. So that's how are we going to compute, okay, or to decide which one is most valuable obligation. Okay, so we're talking about obligation here. I hope you understand that. So now, allow me to proceed to the next one, which is all about the equation of value. So, ano po ba ang equation of value? So, we are not actually formulating an equation here involving obligations as well. So, when we say equation of value, stated here that it's an equation stating the sum of values received or borrowed, okay, and the sum of the values of payment based on a comparison date. So, there will be here involvement of the sum of the values that you receive or you borrowed and comparison date you have. Okay po? So, ayan po siya. So, ayan po ang equation of value. Are we clear on that? So, in addition, the comparison date should be based on the choice that will make the solution convenient to solve. Okay po? So, yeah, we have here this one. This obligations equals payments po. Okay po, as you can see here. So one of the most important problems in mathematics of finance is the replacing of a given set of payments by an equivalent set, okay, which is obligations equal payments. Okay po. So we say that two sets of payments are equivalent at a given simple interest rate if the dated values of the sets on a common date are equal as well. So an equation is stating that the dated values on a common date of two sets of payments are equal. Okay po, and that's what we call an equation of value or an equation of equivalence. Okay po, so the date used is what we call the focal date. So there will be an involvement here of focal date or the comparison date or the valuation date. So a very effective way to solve many problems in mathematics of finance is to use the equation of value. That's why this will be um, the the concept of this. That's why it's important to use the equation of value. Okay, so we have here the given example for you to understand more about the equation of values. Okay po. So let's consider this given example. Let me read this one to you. James Labrusca borrowed two amounts, and this will be the amounts that that he borrowed. Okay po. So we have your 7,600 due without interest at the end of 8 years. Okay, so we are pertaining to this principal amount po. Okay po, na kung saan po wala siyang interest at the end of 8 years. While this one po, sa B po, we have your 8,400 po, due at the end of 4 years naman po, with interest from today at 8% compounded quarterly. Okay? All right. So as you can see here, we have your two conditions. Okay? We should say that this one is compound interest problem, right? So we have here that one, and as a general, Mr. James Lubrusco will settle his obligations by two equal payments. Okay, so we are assuming na dapat po ang second at yung 7 years niya po na pagbabayad, okay, is actually equal. So if money is worth 6% compounded quarterly, we are pertaining to the quarterly as the frequency conversion, what would be the new payments? Ano po yung payment na babayaran niya sa second year at seventh year? Dapat po parehas daw po yan, given these two conditions. So how to do that? Of course, here are the steps. So the first thing to do, of course, you have to identify the obligations. As you can see here for letter A, di ba, we have there the principal amount, 7,600 without interest at the end of 8 years, right? And for this one, for the second one, on the right corner, you have there the principal amount, which is 8,400, and your T is 4. Your T is 4 here, 4 years, and your rate of interest is 8%. That's why we have your 8% converted into decimal, which is 0.08, and your M is equal to 2, since we're talking about semi-annually, okay? So to find the n, you just need, again, you just need to multiply m times t, okay? Wherein your m is 2 and your t is 4, so 4 times 2, you will be having 8 as for the n. And for the I, you just need to divide rate of interest all over m. So 0.08 divided by 2, you will be having 0.04 for I, okay? So we are looking for the final amount. Okay po, so all you have to do again is you have to substitute or you have to plug in the given values. Okay, your P will be 8,400 and your I will be 0.04 as we computed, right? And your N is 8. Okay, so if you are going to simplify this one, you will come up with this value, which is F sub 1 equals 11,495.90. Okay, that is for step 1, identify the obligation. Step 2, I want you to draw now the time diagram or the cash flow. So again, how are we going to draw that one? Of course, you should know the years po. Okay? So this is at the end of 8 years at ang pinakamalaki is 8 years kasi po ay 4 years naman to. So let's draw, okay, 8 here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? And it's stated that every year, so we're talking about quarterly, how many periods do we have in a year? You have 4, since we're talking about quarterly. So we have to divide 4, okay, periods in a year. Let's say this will be 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's divided into 4. So ito pong first year divided into 4 periods. Okay po? So as you can see here, we have here the payments view and the obligations view. So how are we going to know that? Okay, how are we going to find the certain or an equal payment for the second or the seventh year? Okay po? So the first thing to do, dito muna tayo. So disregard po na natin itong payments rule. Dito muna tayo sa obligations. Okay? Okay po. So sa obligation po, meron po tayo ditong first, okay, which is the final amount, 11,495.98. Okay, and how are we going to find n equals negative 16? Again, it talks about, ito po, dito muna tayo. So we're talking about this one, 8 year, which is 7,600. And if you're going, ibabalik po natin siya sa focal date, which is 4 years. Okay, so let's go back there. And it talks about the past. Therefore, that you will be having negative exponent. Okay, so let's just only count how many periods we have between 4 into 8. So we will be having 16. Since 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on and so forth is 16 po. Okay, that's why we have our n equals negative 16. That's for the obligations. For the payments naman po, okay, if you're going to add this one, ito po, dapat po parehas daw po yung payment po natin dito. Okay? So how the first thing to do muna is to find the value of n. Okay? Starting from the second year. Ito po yung second year natin. Ito po ang seventh year natin. Okay? So ibalik natin sa focal date natin. It talks about in the future. Therefore, you have positive. Okay po? Then you will be having 8 because 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. You will be having 8 po dito. And for this one, for the seventh year naman po, let's find the n, which is negative 12. Why? Because it talks about the past. So you have your negative. And how do we come up with 12? You just need to count the 7th year up to here, the periods into 4. Okay po? Period 4 into 7 po. Okay po, 7th year. So 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth, you will be having negative 12. Okay, so now you have now here the values of your n and this one. So all you have to do, and we can now actually find the obligations. Okay, how to find the obligations? For step 3, you have to bring all the dated values to focal date using the specified interest rate as what we computed. And now we can now actually formulate an equation of values. Okay, using the obligations. As you can see here, dito po muna tayo mag-focus sa obligation. Let's find the obligations. Okay po. So meron tayo ditong first amount. You just need to add only the amount. So we have your 11,495.98 at i-add po natin siya dito sa 7,600 wherein meron siyang n equals -16. So do the same thing. Ipa-plug in lang po. We can now actually use the formula for compound interest, and we all know that this is your I and this will be your n. Your n, as what we computed, you have your -16. And your 0.015, how do we come up with that? Again, we have here 0.06 as we computed, right? 6% or 0.06, and it compounded quarterly, so we have 4. All you have to do is you have to divide that one, 0.06 divided by 4, and that will be served as your I. That's why we have here 0.015. So if you're going to simplify that one, you will come up with 0.015, okay? So we have here the principal amount, which is 76 here, 7,600, and 1 plus the I, it raised to -16. So if you're going to simplify that one, this one po, in your calculator, you will come up with this amount, which is 5989.035899, okay? And i-add po natin siya sa first amount na meron tayo, F sub 1. So if you're going to add that one, the obligations will be equal to what? 17,485.0159. Okay, so this will be your obligations. And now we can actually find the payments naman. So let's look for the payments view naman. Ito po. Okay po. So pag pinag-plus po natin tong n plus this one, n -12, you will be having an equation also. So now how to formulate an equation of values. So since we have your principal amount, we are looking for the principal amount, yung x mo, okay, na kung saan dapat parehas po yung payment na ibabayad ni James Labrusca sa second year at seventh year. Okay, so let's represent that one as x, which is a no. So you will be having x here. And do the same thing, copy lang po, plus 1 plus 0.015. And why do we have here 8? Because we are looking for this one, n equals 8. And on the other side, n equals -12 naman po, which is ito po. So unknown pa rin po yung x. So if you're going to simplify this one in your calculator, input that, you will be having this result, which is this one, times by x, that's why we have our x. Plus, do the same thing, simplify din po ito, input lang sa calculator, that is actually, calculator matters. So you will be having 0 point and so on and so forth, okay? We're going to simplify x. And if you're going to add this one, since they have like terms, the same variable, right? You will be having 1.9628800009x as for the payment. This will be the equation for the payments. And let's go back to the concept wherein the obligations is actually, or the obligation is actually equal to the payment, isn't it? Let's go back here. So it's stated here that obligations ay equal po sa payments. So we can actually use that concept for us to know the equal payment for second year and seventh year. So all you have to do for step 4, you have to set up the equation of volume and solve the equation. We can actually equate the obligations equals payment. Your obligation again is 17,485.0159 equals your payments as what we computed. Copy lang po. Okay po. And yung X po, ito yung principal amount na babayaran ni James Labrusca. How to find that? Of course, using laws of algebra, we can actually divide this one, both sides into the, this one, numerical coefficient of X, which is 1.96 and so on and so forth. And if you're going to divide that one into that, you will be having, okay, this one, which is 8,907.75. Thus, we should say in conclusion that, Mr. James Labrusca needs to pay 8,907.75 on the second year at seventh year. So, parehas yung babayaran ng gantong amount yung second year at seventh year na hiniram niya po. Okay? Second year and seventh years to settle his obligation. Okay? So, that's how are we going to formulate an equation po. Okay po? of values. Okay, so I hope you learned something new. Let me know if you have questions or clarifications. Let me know here. Okay, so if you don't have no questions or clarifications or queries, I think this is only for today, and I hope you learned something new, especially with the concept of obligations and the equation of values. Thank you for listening, everyone.